light on this. Stephen Davies is an author and journalist, and he joins us now from Dunedin, New Zealand. Well, thank you very much for joining us. So what kind of legacy does he actually leave behind? Is he an icon of liberation, or as some have called him, or is he a hero turned tyrant?
When you think of Robert Mugabe, I think you have to think of that famous quote, "Power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely." The answer to your question is both. If you'd written Mugabe's obituary in the 1980s, he would have been seen as a liberator, as a man who took his country into democracy, having thrown over colonialism, as a man who reached out to both black and white in Zimbabwe, promised a future where everybody would have a say. If you wrote his obituary now, he's a man who destroyed his country, who abandoned his original beliefs, who turned one of Africa's most successful food-producing countries into a country where they had to import food and where the population was starving and where they had cholera. He's also, by the way, became, sadly, in my Truth Teller, I investigated the spread of conspiracy theories around the world. He was a propagator of conspiracy theories, trying to wind up his population, his people, by saying there were various Western plots to do him down.
So, as you mentioned, he has been seen as a courageous figure in the past for his defiance against white minority rule. So what did change in him for the man he did become?
I think that if you look at his time as a guerrilla and his time in coming to power, I think we can say he was never truly a Democrat. I think that he thought that what he wanted and what he believed in was good for his country. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not true. But later on, as he got older, he kind of began to see himself as the country, and that's always dangerous in a politician. He also, of course, fell out with the people who had helped him liberate the country, like Nkomo. And in the end, he became effectively a leader for only a small part of the nation, and willing to use the powers of the state security, to suppress opposition. And as I said, he ended up making people poor, his own supporters poor, and the supporters of other people as well.
So what does he leave behind for the country, Stephen?
Well, I think that if you compare him, for instance, with Mandela, they both began as liberators, and Mugabe, had he carried along on that path, could have gone down as one of the great men of Africa. But he went to the dark side, effectively, and where Mandela reached out and helped to make his country prosperous and genuinely wanted reconciliation, we'll regard as Mugabe as a man who came to power by promising one thing, but then did the opposite and actually turned his country into really a terrible example of impoverishment, a country that went from being relatively well off to incredibly poor, and enabled, by the way, by South Africa and other African countries who were prepared to turn a blind eye to what Mugabe did, because he was seen as a great liberation leader. So, you know, the Mugabe of the 1980s was not the Mugabe who died yesterday.
Well, we do have to wrap it up here, but thank you very much for that insight, Stephen Davies.